On the 22nd of June, 2026, in a 2-0 victory over Panama at the World Cup, Harry Kane did two things. He scored his 11th World Cup goal, surpassing Gary Lineker as England's all-time leading scorer in the tournament's history. And he walked onto the pitch wearing the captain's armband for the 90th time. 90 times as England captain. The same number as Bobby Moore, a record that had stood for over 50 years, untouched, belonging to the only man who had ever lifted a World Cup trophy for England. And now Harry Kane, from Walthamstow, stood level with Bobby Moore, from Barking. Two men from the same corner of East London, born 28 years apart, connected by a statistic that means more than any number in English football. One was a centre-back who never needed to foul, who read the game so well that he intercepted passes before they were even played. The other is a centre-forward who scores with either foot and with his head, and has put the ball in the net more times for England than any player in history. They played in completely different positions, different eras, 60 years apart, but they led in exactly the same way. Quietly. By example. This is the story of those 90 armband appearances. The story of what Bobby Moore was to England 60 years ago and what Harry Kane is to England right now. They are separated by just one thing. A trophy. The most important trophy in the world. Robert Frederick Chelsea Moore was born on the 12th of April, 1941, in Barking, Essex, on the eastern edge of London. He grew up in a modest household, the son of a gas fitter, in a part of the city where football was not a luxury, but a necessity. He joined West Ham United as a youth player at the age of 15 and signed his first professional contract 2 years later. He was not fast. He was not physical in the way that most centre-backs of his era were physical, the kind who kicked first and asked questions later. What he was, from the very beginning, was composed. He read the game with a clarity that made everything he did look effortless. He intercepted passes before they were played. He timed tackles with the precision of a surgeon. He distributed the ball out of defence with an elegance that was decades ahead of its time. Alf Ramsey, who managed England from 1963 to 1974, saw Moore for what he was almost immediately. He made him captain of England on the 29th of May, 1963, for a friendly against Czechoslovakia at Wembley. Moore was 22 years and 47 days old. He was the youngest captain of the modern era. And from that moment until his final international appearance in 1973, he wore the armband 90 times. 90 matches. 90 times he led England out of the tunnel and onto the pitch with the responsibility of an entire nation on his arm. Moore's leadership was quiet. It was not performative. He did not scream at teammates. He did not wave his arms or bark instructions. He led by presence, by example, by the simple act of being the calmest and most assured person on the pitch at all times, regardless of the circumstances. Bobby Charlton, who played alongside him for a decade, described him in 5 words that said everything. My captain, my leader, my right-hand man. Geoff Hurst, who scored the hat-trick in the 1966 World Cup final, said Moore was the greatest defender he had ever seen and the greatest captain he had ever played under. Pele, after facing Moore in the 1970 World Cup, called him the greatest defender in the history of football. That match, in which Moore produced a tackle on Jairzinho that is still regarded as the single greatest piece of defending ever seen at a World Cup, cemented his reputation as a player who operated on a different plane to everyone else. He did not need to foul. He did not need to intimidate. He simply read the game better than any human being who has ever played it. The defining image of Moore's career, and perhaps the defining image of English football, took place on the 30th of July, 1966. The road to that moment had been anything but straightforward. England opened the World Cup with a goalless draw against Uruguay that was booed by sections of the Wembley crowd. They beat Mexico 2-0 and France 2-0 to progress from the group stage, but the performances were workmanlike rather than inspiring. In the quarter-final, they faced Argentina in one of the most brutal matches the World Cup had ever seen. Argentina's captain, Antonio Ratin, was sent off for dissent, and the match descended into a war of attrition before Geoff Hurst headed the winner. In the semi-final, Bobby Charlton scored twice against a Portugal side led by the brilliant Eusebio, and England reached the final for the first time. Throughout it all, Moore was the foundation. He organised the defence, he calmed the nerves, he made the tackles that mattered and delivered the passes that unlocked opposition defences. He was 25 years old and he was the best defender at the tournament. The final against West Germany was a match that no English person alive at the time would ever forget. Helmut Haller gave Germany the lead after 12 minutes. Hurst equalised 6 minutes later, heading home from a quickly taken free kick by Moore. A moment of composure and vision from the captain that created the goal out of nothing. Martin Peters scored in the 78th minute to make it 2-1. Wolfgang Weber equalised in the final seconds of normal time to force extra time, and then Hurst scored twice more, including the controversial third goal that struck the underside of the crossbar and may or may not have crossed the line, and the fourth that he smashed into the roof of the net in the final minute as Kenneth Wolstenholme delivered the most famous words in the history of English sports commentary. They think it is all over. It is now. England had won the World Cup 4-2, and Moore walked up the steps of the royal box to receive the Jules Rimet trophy from Queen Elizabeth II. Before he shook her hand, he paused and wiped his own hands on his shorts. He did not want to get the Queen's white gloves dirty. It was a small gesture, noticed by almost nobody at the time, but it captured everything about who Bobby Moore was. Composure, dignity, grace under pressure. Even in the greatest moment of his life, he was thinking about someone else. The photograph of Moore holding the trophy aloft, sitting on the shoulders of his teammates with a look of serene satisfaction on his face, is the single most iconic image in the history of English sport. Moore went on to captain England at the 1970 World Cup in Mexico, and his preparations for the tournament were disrupted by one of the most bizarre incidents in football history. While the squad was on a pre-tournament stopover in Colombia, Moore was arrested on fabricated charges of stealing a bracelet from a jewelry shop in the Green Fire Hotel in Bogota. He was held under house arrest for 4 days while the British government worked to secure his release. The charges were eventually dropped entirely. But for 4 days, the captain of the defending world champions sat in a Bogota police station, and his response told you everything about the man. He remained calm. He did not panic. When he was finally released, he played in the World Cup as if nothing had happened. Against Brazil in the group stage, Moore produced a performance that many who watched it consider the finest individual defensive display in the history of international football. His tackle on Jairzinho in the second half, a perfectly timed, perfectly executed slide that stripped the ball from the feet of the greatest winger in the world, is still replayed in coaching sessions around the world as an example of defensive perfection. England lost the match 1-0, but Moore's duel with Pelé and Jairzinho transcended the result. Pelé himself embraced Moore after the final whistle and called him the greatest defender in the history of football. England reached the quarter-finals before being eliminated by West Germany in a devastating 3-2 defeat after extra time, a match in which Moore was blameless. He played his final international match in November 1973, a friendly against Italy, bringing his total to 108 caps, 90 of them as captain. He continued playing club football for West Ham until 1974, then had spells at Fulham and in the North American Soccer League. He moved into management and coaching, but never achieved the success his playing career deserved. He never received a knighthood, despite being widely regarded as the greatest footballer England has ever produced. The omission is still considered one of the greatest sporting injustices in British history. He died of bowel cancer on the 24th of February, 1993, at the age of 51. He was the first of the 1966 World Cup winners to die. The football world mourned him as a man who had embodied everything that was good about the sport. Dignified, humble, brilliant, and gone far too soon. Now look at Harry Kane, and look at the parallels. Harry Edward Kane was born on the 28th of July, 1993, in Walthamstow, in the London borough of Waltham Forest, 5 months after Bobby Moore died. The two men never met. They never could have met. But they were born barely 10 miles apart, in the same sprawling eastern edge of London, and they would go on to follow paths so similar that the coincidences feel almost scripted. Kane's journey to the England captaincy was not a straight line. It was a long, winding, often painful road that tested his resilience at every turn. He was released by Arsenal's academy at the age of 8 for being too chubby and not athletic enough. A rejection that could have ended his football career before it began. He had trials at multiple clubs before Tottenham Hotspur gave him a chance at 11. He worked his way through the youth ranks, impressing coaches with his work ethic and determination rather than any obvious natural brilliance, and was loaned out 4 times to toughen him up. At Leyton Orient, he scored 5 goals in League One. At Millwall, he scored 9 in the Championship and won the club's Young Player of the Year award. At Norwich City, he broke a metatarsal after 2 games and was sent home. At Leicester City, he started just 5 matches and made almost no impression at all. When he returned to Spurs in the summer of 2013, there was a genuine possibility that he would never play for the first team again. He was 20 years old, had been loaned out 4 times, and had done nothing to suggest he was destined for anything more than a career in the lower leagues. But he kept working. He kept improving, and when the chance came, under Tim Sherwood and then Mauricio Pochettino, he seized it with both hands and never let go. He scored 31 goals in the 2014 to 2015 season and was immediately dismissed as a one-season wonder. He responded by winning the Premier League Golden Boot in 2015 to 2016 with 25 goals, and again in 2016 to 2017 with 29. He scored 39 league goals in the calendar year of 2017. A Premier League record, he became Tottenham's all-time leading scorer, surpassing the legendary Jimmy Greaves' record of 266 goals, and finished his Spurs career with 280 goals in 435 appearances. He led Tottenham to the Champions League final in 2019, their first in the club's history, though they lost 2-0 to Liverpool in Madrid. But for all the goals and all the records, there was one glaring absence. In 10 years at Tottenham, Kane never won a trophy. Not the Premier League, not the FA Cup, not the League Cup, not the Champions League. Nothing. The comparison with Moore in this regard was painful. Moore had won the FA Cup twice, the European Cup, Winners' Cup, and the 1966 World Cup. His captaincy had delivered silverware. Kane's captaincy at club level, for all its individual brilliance, had not. In August 2023, Kane moved to Bayern Munich for €110 million, and the question followed him across the continent. Can Harry Kane win a trophy? In his first season, he scored 45 goals in 44 appearances, but Bayern finished third, behind Bayer Leverkusen's miraculous unbeaten campaign. No trophy. The narrative seemed inescapable, and then in 2024 to 2025, Bayern won the Bundesliga. Kane had his first major trophy. He followed it with a second consecutive title in 2025 to 2026, scoring 61 goals across all competitions in a season of almost superhuman productivity. He had finally answered the trophy question at club level. But the bigger question, the one that connects him to Moore, remains unanswered. Can he win it for England? Gareth Southgate appointed Kane as England captain ahead of the 2018 World Cup in Russia. Kane was 24 years old. He had 23 caps. He was not the most experienced player in the squad, not the loudest voice in the dressing room, not the kind of captain who would grab a teammate by the shirt and scream in his face. But Southgate saw in him something that Alf Ramsey had seen in Moore 55 years earlier: a leader who would not need to shout. A captain who would set the standard through his own performance and let others follow. A man whose presence on the pitch made everyone around him calmer, more confident, more willing to believe. Southgate had studied England's history of captaincy, from Wright to Moore, to Robson, to Shearer, to Beckham, to Terry, to Rooney, and he concluded that Kane offered something different from all of them. He offered consistency. He offered reliability. He offered the kind of quiet, unshakable authority that does not crumble when the pressure reaches its peak. Moore had been the same. When the stakes were highest, when the noise was loudest, Moore became quieter, calmer, more precise. Kane does exactly the same thing. The bigger the match, the more composed he becomes. Kane repaid Southgate's faith immediately. At the 2018 World Cup, he scored 6 goals, won the Golden Boot as the tournament's top scorer, and led England to the semi-finals for the first time since 1990. He scored a hat-trick against Panama, a brace against Tunisia, and the decisive penalty against Colombia in the round of 16. England's first ever World Cup penalty shootout victory. England lost to Croatia in the semi-final, but Kane came home as the leader of a squad that had exceeded every expectation and reignited the nation's love affair with the national team. At Euro 2020, delayed by a year until the summer of 2021, due to the global pandemic, Kane captained England to the final at Wembley. It was the first major final England had reached since 1966. And Kane was only the second England captain after Moore to lead the team to the showpiece match of a major tournament. England lost to Italy on penalties in a heartbreaking conclusion that saw Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho and Bukayo Saka miss from the spot. Kane had scored 4 goals in the knockout rounds, including crucial strikes against Germany, Ukraine and Denmark. He had dragged England to the final through sheer force of will. At the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, Kane led England to the quarter-finals, where they met France in what many considered England's best knockout performance in decades. Kane scored from the penalty spot to equalize after Aurélien Tchouaméni had given France the lead with a long-range strike. Olivier Giroud restored France's advantage with a header, and then, with 6 minutes remaining, England won another penalty. Kane stepped up. He had already converted one from 12 yards earlier in the match. He had not missed a competitive penalty for England in his entire career. The stadium held its breath. He struck the ball high. It sailed over the crossbar, over the goalkeeper, over the net, and into the Qatari night sky. The moment was devastating. 60 years of hurt, distilled into a single penalty kick. It was a moment that could have destroyed a lesser man, that could have defined a career in the worst possible way. Kane was asked about it in every press conference for the next 6 months. He never ducked the question. He never made excuses. He never blamed the pitch, the ball, the pressure, or the fatigue. He said he took responsibility, that the pain would stay with him, and that he would use it as fuel to come back stronger. Moore would have recognized that response. When England threw away a 2-0 lead against West Germany in the 1970 World Cup quarter-final, a defeat caused partly by Alf Ramsey's decision to substitute Bobby Charlton and partly by Peter Bonetti's goalkeeping errors, Moore said nothing publicly about blame. He did not point fingers. He did not seek sympathy. He absorbed the pain, held himself with dignity, and moved on. That is the Moore way, and that is the Kane way. Both men understand that the captain does not get to show weakness. The captain absorbs the disappointment so that nobody else has to carry it. At Euro 2024 in Germany, Kane led England to yet another final, their second consecutive European Championship final, where they lost 2-1 to a brilliant Spain side. He scored 3 goals in the tournament, including 2 in the knockout rounds, and was once again England's most important player and leading scorer. 2 major finals as captain of England, both lost. The symmetry with Moore is agonizing, but it cuts in opposite directions. Moore lost just 1 match in his first major tournament as captain and won the whole thing. Kane has lost 2 finals. The difference between the 2 men's legacies rests entirely on the outcome of those final matches. Moore's composure was rewarded with a trophy. Kane's composure has been rewarded with nothing but the knowledge that he came close. Harry Redknapp, the former Tottenham and West Ham manager who watched both men at close range across different eras, made the comparison explicit in 2019. "He is just a class act, on and off the field," Redknapp said of Kane. People said the same about Bobby Moore. "A great captain and leader. He is a great guy, a perfect role model. He gets on with his football and trains hard, works hard." The comparison was not hyperbole. It was observation from a man who had seen Moore play in person and who had managed Kane's development at Tottenham before handing him over to Pochettino. Both men carry themselves with the same understated authority. Both are quiet in public and relentless in private. Both are respected by teammates not because of what they say, but because of what they do. Both come from the same part of London, the same working-class roots, the same tradition of East London footballers who let their performances speak louder than their words. Gary Lineker, the former Manchester United and England defender, offered a more nuanced assessment of Kane's captaincy style ahead of the 2026 World Cup. "I do not see Harry Kane as being the type of captain that John Terry, Brian Robson or Roy Keane was," Lineker said. "But you can lead by example, and I think that is what Harry does. When you look for a captain on the pitch, I think you would rather it be somebody who is in the center of it all, like the Robsons and the Keanes were." Lineker's point was that Kane, as a centre-forward, operates in a different zone of the pitch than the traditional midfield or defensive captain. He cannot organise the defence in the way that Moore could from the back line or that Robson could from the middle of the park. But what he can do, and what he does better than anyone, is lead through action. He scores the goals that matter. He takes the penalties that nobody else wants. He puts his body on the line in the final third of the pitch, and he does it with a consistency that has lasted for over a decade through managers and systems and tactical changes and the relentless scrutiny of a nation that has been waiting 60 years for someone to finish what Bobby Moore started. And now, at the 2026 World Cup, the record has been equalled. 90 appearances as England captain. Moore set that number across a decade of international football from 1963 to 1973, across 108 caps and 2 World Cups and countless friendlies and qualifiers. Kane has matched it across 8 years, from 2018 to 2026, through 3 World Cups, 2 European Championships, and a Nations League campaign. The next time Kane leads England onto the pitch, he will surpass Moore and Billy Wright and stand alone as the most capped captain in the entire 154-year history of English football. It is a milestone that carries enormous symbolic weight. For over half a century, Moore's record has been untouchable, a number so closely associated with one man and one moment, the World Cup final of 1966, that breaking it feels almost like trespassing on sacred ground. The number 90 does not just represent matches, it represents an era, a legacy, a standard of leadership that no other England captain has been able to match. Until now. But Kane has earned the right. He has earned it through more than 500 career goals, through 82 goals for England, more than any other player in the history of the national team, almost 30 clear of Wayne Rooney in second place, through 11 World Cup goals, surpassing Gary Lineker as England's all-time leading scorer in the competition, through 2 European Championship finals, the only England captain besides Moore to reach a major final, and he has done it twice, through 2 Bundesliga titles at Bayern Munich, through a World Cup Golden Boot, threw a penalty missed against France in Qatar that would have broken most men and did not break him, that he absorbed with the same quiet dignity that Moore showed when England threw away a 2-0 lead against West Germany in 1970, through a career that, by any statistical measure, is the greatest ever produced by an English footballer who has worn the captain's armband. The numbers are not close. They are not debatable. Kane's goal-scoring record for England is so far ahead of anyone else who has ever worn the shirt that it exists in a category of its own. And yet, for all the records, for all the goals, for all the armband appearances, there is one thing that Bobby Moore has and Harry Kane does not. A World Cup winner's medal. That is the gap. That is the chasm that separates legacy from legend. Moore is immortal because of what happened on the 30th of July, 1966. Kane, for all his achievements, is not. Not yet. The 2026 World Cup is, in all probability, Kane's last chance. He is 32 years old. He is still scoring at an extraordinary rate, 61 goals for Bayern Munich in the 2025 to 2026 season alone. But the next World Cup is 4 years away in 2030, and he will be 36. Even for a player of Kane's conditioning and professionalism, 36 is old for a centre-forward at the highest level. The window is closing. It may already be closing faster than anyone wants to admit. This is the tournament. This is the moment. This is the stage where the comparison with Moore will either be completed or left forever unfinished. Every match from here on is weighted with the knowledge that if England are eliminated, Kane may never get another chance to do what Moore did on the 30th of July, 1966. Moore wiped his hands before shaking the Queen's. He lifted the trophy into the London sky with both arms. He sat on the shoulders of his teammates with a look of quiet, unshakable satisfaction. He became immortal. Kane has equaled his captaincy record, matched his dignity, mirrored his composure, and carried the armband with the same quiet, understated authority that Moore made the gold standard for English football captaincy. He has done everything Moore did, except the one thing that matters most. He has not lifted the trophy. He has not had his moment on the steps of the royal box. He has not wiped his hands. 60 years ago, Bobby Moore showed England what a captain looks like. He showed them that leadership is not about volume. It is about presence. It is not about shouting. It is about standards. It is not about being the most talented player on the pitch. It is about being the one that everyone else trusts when the pressure is at its highest and the stakes are at their greatest. Harry Kane is what Bobby Moore was 60 years ago. The captain, the leader, the standard bearer, the man from East London with the armband on his sleeve and the weight of a nation on his shoulders. 90 times and counting. More than any England captain who has ever lived. More than Moore, more than Wright, more than anyone. The only question left is whether the story ends the same way. Like and subscribe for more football documentaries. Until next time.